our Reverend Ayleen Augustine came into our church and just kind of changed it around. And she is helping us with administrative work. She's putting on classes. She's teaching ministers.
Bingo!
She's putting together bingo for here. We're going to be doing all sorts of things under her command. So many different things that are going on.
Wow. Captain, my captain.
Please welcome Reverend Dr. Ayleen Augustine.
Yay! Woo!
Hello. It's always funny, people, so what are you going to say? It's like, I have no earthly idea. I just open up and something comes out.
Oh, why don't you mention you're a chiropractor?
Oh, yeah, chiropractor. That too, yeah. Yeah, my first idea for a business card was, we'll touch you for money. I have a feeling that might not have gone well.
It's probably been used.
Although I probably would have had a lot of calls that first week. When I was young, one of the things about being raised by 2 Air Force sergeants, both my parents had been Air Force sergeants, and other than knowing how to military roll my socks and be able to bounce a quarter on my bed after I make it, my father was a tremendously proud man. He was very dignified. He did so much for communities. He was constantly working with people, and he had this fundamental sense of self. He always used to tell me that I should treat my signature like gold, because whatever I put my signature on, it was that important. One of the other things that he always said whenever we were going out was, remember who you are. Now, being a teenager and rebelling against 2 Air Force sergeants, unsuccessfully most of the time, but I reached that point in my life where it's like, why? I resented him saying that to me, because it's like, oh, I can't just go out and be myself. Because my dad made it very clear, you go out and you represent me. So I don't care what these other people do. And Corky actually worked with my dad. After I came here, I found out that Corky had worked with my father.
Double victory.
And, other than having posture absolutely straight, he was very clear. When you go out there and you walk in the world, you realize what you represent and who you represent. And other than a slight rebellious phase during Rocky Horror Picture Show, I grew to understand on a much deeper level what he meant by that. And I understood that it meant you walk your talk. You don't, go out there and, do whatever you please thinking, oh, well, I'm just being me. That there's a responsibility. And as I began to work with spiritual works and learning about that part of myself, it became much more important to me. I tell myself every morning when I walk out my door, remember who you are. Because I know that there are people depending on me, 1, to be in my truth, 2, to do my absolute best that I can, and to, just be able to show, what, you teach all these spiritual things and techniques and tools for managing energy and all of that stuff. If I'm not doing it, it doesn't mean anything. People are counting on me to be able to demonstrate that what I say is not only what I do, but that it works. Sometimes it's tough, sometimes it's really hard. Walking our talk and being who we need to be based on what we expect of ourselves. That is the most important thing that we can do, because that means 1, we're being authentic, 2, we're walking our talk. And today we're going to be talking about being the light. And I love that song. That was one of the first songs that I actually started singing soprano. I guess I'm a sopralto. I am whatever the choir needs me to be. But, it was a stretch for me. Just getting up and singing was a huge stretch for me. And, the idea that here I was taking it to another level, because I never believed I could sing soprano. And so it's like, no, and then Cat and Ann, it's like, no, you can do it, you can do this. And so I learned I could do that. And so Be the Light was a very special song to me for a couple of reasons. It also always reminds me of one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, who's Virginia Essene. She was a part of this church. If you Google her, you'll find a lot. I believe she was published 26 times. She toured the world talking about spirituality, about, just all kinds of stuff. I'm not sure if there's a country or continent she didn't set foot on, short of Antarctica. And if there was somebody there who needed to hear, she would have gone there too. And whenever she'd come here, she'd always stand up and she'd have like a little sparkly thing, and she'd say, who are you? And we would say, we are the light of the world. And whenever she said that, it reminded me of my dad. Because it wasn't light, it wasn't casual, there was an intensity. It was her saying, remember who you are. Go out there and walk your walk and be what you need to be. And being the light is not an easy thing. Being the light can be tremendously challenging because of the fact that, it means literally we have to walk our talk. It means that we hold ourselves to a standard, that we don't give ourselves excuses. And yes, we all go there. We are in human bodies, and some days you just wake up spoiling for a fight. Yes. Have you ever had one of those days when it's like, please somebody start something with me. Please do me a favor. I want you to start something with me just so I can let this out. And we all have that day. Yours truly, definitely. And then I remember, okay, where am I in my heart? Am I forgetting who I am? Am I, and I acknowledge it. When we get upset, when we have those moments, embrace it. It's a part of the perks of humanity. But we get to go there, just don't pitch a tent. It's like, decide, all right, I'm having one of my very human moments, and what is it that's triggering me? Because a lot of times if I'm feeling like that, I find I'm afraid of something. Something's worrying me. And anger is like, the guard dog chained up out in front of the house. It's going to bark at everybody. It's going to keep everybody off. But the one behind it, the one peeking out through the curtain behind the door, is fear. And it's like, okay, if anger can stay out there long enough, I'm safe. Because no one will get close enough to hurt me or to see that I'm scared. And that can be a really, really tough thing to get past. Because through our lives, we learn reactions. And whether it's because of how we grew up, because of, the environment that we had, because of influences in our lives, we create reactions that allow us to move forward. If a conflict comes up and you react with anger because you always did, and hey, that's how we do things. Gets people away from me, I'm fine. It reaches a point where we have to choose action as opposed to react. What is my choice in this moment? Is my choice to be the light? All right, in this moment, and honestly, Creator is okay with you messing it up. Creator is okay with you not getting it perfect, because that's why we're here. You don't expect, you have a kindergartner come in and it's like, okay, here's algebra, do it. They're like, I can work on not eating the crayon today. That's about as far as I can go. You don't give a kindergartner algebra.
Right.
Because they don't know it yet. They have to experience. They have to, learn what 1 + 1 is. And then you grow from there. Creator doesn't ask us to know algebra when we're still trying to figure out 1 + 1. And on those days when it's all we can do not to eat the crayons, that's good enough too. But when we step up and say, you know what? I made it through kindergarten. I'll take a shot at the algebra. I am ready to be the light. And that is a very serious thing to take on. It's, the idea that what we say sets things into motion. And saying, you know what, I'm ready to be the light. What does that really mean? Does that mean that, well, I'm going to go around and I'm going to smile at everybody and I'm going to tell them to have a nice day? Yeah, that's being the light. Can you be the light when somebody has challenged you? When somebody has put you down? When somebody is a part of a group that is known for, being disruptive and spreading, shadow? Can you still be the light in that? Can you be the light within that shadow?
It's tough.
Or do you let them take you to the shadow where they are? Misery loves company, and so does shadow. Now, I don't say shadow in the idea of good versus evil. Shadow is that aspect that tends towards chaos. Shadow is that duality of the nature. And when we have situations where somebody is just so in opposition to what we feel is light, then it's hard. Because it's like, no, this is the light, and this is how I view the light, and so this is how everybody should view the light. Every person in here has a different definition of shadow and light. Because there is that perspective. I have friends who are like, just amazingly conservative. Amazingly. Absolute Christian right-wing conservatives, and I adore them and they adore me. Because we both know that we each just see something different. We don't get into arguments over who's right, because usually once that starts, nobody's going to win. It's like, oh. And I remember when I first met them and realized that they were tremendously, conservative and all of that stuff. And they were saying, the husband was saying some things that it was like, wow, I am not embracing this. So I went up to him and I said, I don't understand why you feel the way you feel, but I'd like to. Can you explain it to me? And he looked at me and he goes, and in a very neutral tone, and I made sure I was in my space where I was ready to listen. And I heard the words he said, and it's like, you know what? I can see some of that. I can see some of it. I may not agree with the way that you get there, but I can see that your ultimate heart's desire is exactly the same as mine. For people to be happy, for people to feel safe, for people to be able to be abundant. Yes, there's an entirely different viewpoint on how it happens, but we were able to agree that that was what we both wanted. And after he talked, I said, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. And he looked at me and he said, no one has ever asked me why I feel how I feel.
Wow.
And I said, I know other things about you. I said, you seem to be a very good person. You and your wife seem to be wonderful people. And really fun. So he goes, but is it okay with you if we don't agree on this? He said, because honestly, I can't see myself changing my viewpoint. I said, I'd never ask you to. It's like my sons were involved in Boy Scouts, and it was like, you know what, we can talk Boy Scouts. And he goes, oh, I like that. And she liked it too. But we found that we were able to connect as human beings. We were able to be that light, even though we, had things that we didn't agree on. And that's the nature of life, is that we're going to find, nobody in this room is going to agree 100% with everything anybody agrees with.
They should.
They should. Well, they should just agree with Dottie. If Dottie says it, okay, we all agree with that. But the fact, I have learned more from people who don't agree with me than I do from people who do. It's like, because then it allows you to see something from a different perspective. That's a part of being the light. One is the willingness to see something from a different perspective. To say, the light doesn't have to be as I define the light to be. And, and as far as I'm concerned, if, an orphan child walked through that door, they should get the exact same hug as if Donald Trump walked through that door. Oh God, the door just opened. It's like, scared myself for a minute there.
Well, you said something real.
But the thing is that a candle will light the exact same way for someone who is, for the Dalai Lama and Pope Francis as it would for Donald Trump and anybody else sort of in that area. So, but the light shines equally on both. If you are choosing to be the light, we don't get the privilege of deciding who's worthy of it. No candle ever decides who's worthy. Because deep down, a lot of times, sometimes we don't feel worthy. How many times, and I know it's been for me, I don't think I'm worthy to have light cast upon me. And I do a lot of cool things for a lot of cool people, but I wasn't always this way. There were points in my life when it's like, wow, not so good. Can we get a retake on that? And you wish that there's parts of your life that you could redo. But the thing is, if I redid those parts, I wouldn't have learned what I learned from them. I had to go into my shadow. I acknowledge I have shadow. As everyone else, we are creatures of light and shadow, but we have choice. But I know that I cannot restrict that light to just the people I agree with. I cannot restrict that light to the people who I think are deserving. Even if it's somebody who I don't believe is deserving, they get that light too. They get that understanding. They get that acknowledgement. And it's hard. It really is. And we don't always do well with it. And how do you define what is light? That is an interesting question, because it would seem like, well, that's a pretty easy thing to define. It's like anything that isn't shadow. Or, light is sharing. Light is giving hugs. Light is being loving. Light is not being judgmental. Not necessarily for everybody. For some people, it's like, okay, light is, I don't tell anybody off today. If I make a whole day and I don't tell somebody about themselves, that's my effort. And that's as far as their light needs to go. And maybe there's somebody who does need to be told about themselves, and that's their job. But the idea that it's not up to me to decide what it is that constitutes light for someone else, because we can't. That's like trying to define God. Everybody here has a slightly different definition, a slightly different visual of that. And that's wonderful, because God's all of them.
God gave you the right.
Yeah, we have the right to choose. We have the ability to choose. Because if we weren't supposed to face choice, we would never have been given choice. My mind, God can do everything, including remove my ability to choose. So that means everybody would think the same, everybody would be the same, everybody would play nice according to a specific set of rules. But we were given choice. We were given the ability to be pissy. We were given the ability to have bias. We were given the ability to resent because of the fact we can't learn how not to choose it if we don't experience it. When you feel that resentment inside of you and how it eats at you, you can't quite... you can't be in that space if you've got that resentment. When I first started learning, it was in 2004, and when I started formal classes. And my teacher at that time, it was exciting, and it's like the idea of lighting the candles to set the container terrified me. It's like, oh my God, I can't remember the difference between sage and cedar. Ah! I'd freak out a lot because it was so important to me to get it right. And one day he said, there are no justified resentments. And I thought, yes, there are. You're kidding me. You don't get out much, do you? On the inside, not on the outside. But I did write it in my notebook. It's like, seriously? And it took me a long time because I felt there were justified resentments. If somebody were to harm one of my kids, oh yeah, we're going there. It's on. And then I thought about it and I made it a mantra. And so whenever I'd start feeling, I'd say, there are no justified resentments, there are no justified resentments there. And it made me face the fact that I was in judgment. Because if I felt a resentment was worthy of me holding on to it, it's like, well, yeah, they said they were sorry, yeah, we got past it, but I'm not past it. I'm gonna hold on to this for a while.
I'll forgive, I don't.
You know, it's like, yeah, I'll forgive, I don't forget.
Fool me once.
You don't have to. For me, the definition of forgiveness is that a person or event no longer has the ability to inspire in me a feeling I don't want to feel. Because if somebody, hold on just a second, if someone is still got that hook on me for something they've done to me, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling resentment. I don't want to feel those things. That doesn't help me. But there's a bit of a helplessness. It's like, dang, I don't want to feel this, but I do. And, well, it is choice. I had to accept that I was choosing to go into that space, not because of anything they had done recently, but because of what I still held on to from the past. Marianne Williamson said in her Return to Love, which was, it was believed to have been from Nelson Mandela's inaugural speech in 1984, but actually it wasn't. But in a part of that, you are born to make manifest the glory of God, however you define God. But you were born to make manifest that amazing, beautiful energy. And a part of that is, you know what? I can learn a better way to be. I don't have to be mad. I don't have to be angry. That person no longer has the power to create in me a feeling that damages me, as opposed to, just walking around and it's like, oh yeah, we're over it. And then, they walk away and I'm like eye rolling. We all go with that eye roll. It's like, oh yeah, look, we'll have to have lunch, yeah. That's not happening.
Really? Yeah, right.
I know this because I've been there. And when I realized every time I did that, I felt less. And, the best analogy I can think of is like, you know what? You got the touchdown, you don't need to spike the ball.
Really? Huh? I like that.
You remember when they used to spike the ball and after a while they told us, like, no, you can't spike the ball because that's rude. You don't have to spike the ball. If you know in your heart, even if the other person never acknowledges that they were hurtful or incorrect, even if they never ask you for forgiveness, you can still let it go. And it's like, you know what? I will not go there and you do not have the power to make me go there. I do not agree with joining you in that, that energy because I'm better than that. I deserve more. I deserve to be happy. If I'm letting somebody else direct how I feel, if I'm letting my own fear direct how I feel. Come on, the best defense is a good offense. They could hurt you again. Keep them at arm's length. Make sure you're watching. That's my fear talking. And fear is telling anger, go ahead. Tell them to start something. Hope that they start something.
Right. Give me a reason.
It doesn't matter. Because when it comes down to is what is your truth? Are you ready to say, I am the light? One of the phrases that I was taught and one of the practices was to become a walking prayer. A walking prayer, and think of what a prayer means. A prayer is a connection between us and divine, between us and Creator, however we envision it. So to become a walking prayer means you become that connection. You become that energetic reach. Not just for yourself, but for other people. And when I start getting wrapped up in, petty stuff, because really in a lot of cases it is petty stuff. We're going to disagree on politics, we disagree on economics, we can disagree on religion. Ultimately, none of it matters. It's all the story we attach to it. And if we can go, you know what? Not only am I better than that, but really the person you're talking to is better than it too. Because, like you, they're a divine being having a human experience. We're all divine beings having human experiences. And sometimes we get it right, sometimes not so much. But that's what we're here for, is to figure it out. We're here to be able to go, oh, that didn't work out the way I wanted to, let me try something different. It's why we have community, because then we can help each other to be able to use the tools. We have the tools. It's a matter of using the tools. It's a matter of remembering our place of love, remembering the times that we hurt somebody, remembering the times that we, that maybe we didn't know, but we know more. Once you know more, you don't have as much of an excuse to go there. And if you do go there consciously. Say, you know what? I'm making this choice, I'm going to be in this anger, I'm going to be in this field, and I'm not going to pitch a tent. I'm going to go and I'm going to pick my friend who I always vent to, and I'm going to vent about it, I'm going to say how unfair it is, and I don't even have to be spiritually superior or anything, I'm just going to go there.
That's right.
And then you get it out of your system, and then you go, okay, you take a breath and you say, all right, I've gotten that out of my system. This is still a divine being I'm dealing with. And so am I. And I know that I appreciate when people are compassionate with me, and I know that I can demonstrate that. That somebody else can be less angry because I make a choice. And like I said, I don't care who it is. Because if somebody is that hateful, they're hurting. They are suffering. These are people who are just, they're scared. And if you picture them as a 6-year-old, it's a lot easier to have compassion. Picturing Donald Trump as a 6-year-old. Because you're halfway there because he sounds like one a lot of times. But, but the thing is that he's also divine. He also, I pray for him. Because, it's about holding that thought no matter what. And if you lose that thought, you go back to it. Because it's like, you know what? I'm going to talk about him. I'm going to make snarky comments. I'm going to do all this. Where does that make me? This has nothing to do with him. Yeah. And is that where you want to be? It puts you on, it puts me on the exact same level. For my light, my being the light means that he is just as deserving of love and compassion as anyone else, because he's trying to figure it out just like everyone else. And and everything else, all the feelings about people, whether it's politicians or whether it's just somebody down the street who their dog poops in your yard. It's about realizing that anything I project at them is me. I project thought on them being less worthy. I project thought on them of, being, evil or being, it's like, you know what, you call somebody evil, you give them an awful lot of power. I like to just say they're confused. It's like, you know what, they're confused. And they are scared. I don't buy into that. There are very few people who are alive who I will give the power to say evil, and he doesn't even rate. It's like, you know what, he's confused. He's, he is. He just, and the idea of attaching story to what somebody does, it's like, look, they just did something. This is how it affected me, and the story I choose to create is, it really doesn't matter. It's not important. It doesn't belong to me. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I have nothing invested in this fight. Let them believe what they want to believe. But if you're going to be the light, if you're going to be coming from that place of heart, You have to hold yourself to a higher standard. Like, I will not judge. I will not create story. I will bless that person and just figure, you know what they do is based on Creator. Yes, Lynn?
I just want to testify to what Reverend Ayleen did in my house on this principle. It was just so amazing. I have a young man staying with me who's a fundamentalist Christian, and she was doing some wonderful work on his girlfriend. He came in, and he wanted to know if Reverend Ayleen had accepted Jesus Christ as her Savior, and I was offended by him doing that, and she handled it exactly as she's talking about. She gave thought, and she could certainly, because she's multi-faith, and it moved. But I would have had I still had judgment on him doing that, and yet you really walk your talk, and by having that,
Thank you.
the healing worked out. I was very impressed by what she did.
So I wanted to brag
Thank
about it too. She'll let me, that's all right.
Yes, Carolyn. Yes, my dear.
Okay. When Ayleen did my closure for my husband passing with me, all of those retirements I've had for years are gone. It's really gone.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Woo! That's huge.
Sharon, yes.
I just wanted to share what you were saying about, like being the best you can be. My husband instilled that in my kids when he was coaching their football and whatever, that you have to learn how to win gracefully and lose gracefully, because we were always winning, and when they would lose, my son would be like hysterical, and he said, you know what, did you do the best that you could do? That's all I expected. You have fun out there, then you're winners. It doesn't matter what the score was. And he taught and from then on, all three of my kids were like that, come on, you can do it, whether they sat on the bench or they were out there. They learned. If they played, they suited up, they were part of the team. And my youngest one especially, he's really good at those video games. We had a friend, we call him KP, and my son played a skateboard, I don't know what SS50, and he would taunt him, yeah, baby. My husband took it away. He goes, you know what? You're not going to act like that. And then here's a 35-year-old man going, he's ready to kill him. And he goes, if you don't play that, Michael, you're not going to play, He was like, yeah, ha-ha, KP, And they taught him, and I thought, what are you doing? It's just a little kid. But then I thought about it, and he's right. He taught him a life lesson that, you don't treat other people like that, whether you're playing a game or whether it's real life. But, as long as you do your best and project that on other people, like you said with Trump, Bernie Sanders says his ideas are actually, some of them are okay. It's how you present them. He lets it, his butt lead his brain. So and it does, and it's scary because you can't come back as president and say, "Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean it." The next day, so that's what's scary. But it's just he just doesn't think with his.
Yeah.
He uses his mouth sometimes.
And there are points when we all do. So, the takeaway from this is that we can only do the best we can. We can be the best light we know to be in that moment. And cut yourself some slack. Ultimately it comes down to do your spiritual work on yourself, love Creator however you envision, and make a few people smile along the way.
That's right.
Amen.
That, as far as I'm concerned, that's the basics for just being able to be the light. Thank you.
Thank you.